Welcome to Hotline TV, everybody. I'm John Mercurio.
And I'm Amy Walter. Well, it is one of our favorite times of the year.
Correct.
It's sweater weather. The leaves are falling, and third quarter FEC reports are in. Woo!
Do the wave, do the wave, do the wave.
All right.
All right, they are indeed in, Amy Walter, and one has to wonder, in this economy, what can $8 million buy a candidate? All right, we are going to go through in topic by topic, section by section, talk about some of these numbers. Let's start with $8 million. Now, $8 million, I believe we're talking about the amount of money that was raised by
It's the amount of money that Harry Reid, has
not only Harry
in the
Reid,
bank,
but
and Arlen Specter.
Arlen Specter, more than $8 million, actually, for both of them. $8.7 million for Reid. This is not just during the quarter, though. This is year to date, or whatever you call that. So let's talk first about Arlen Specter. $8 million. He also raised $1.8 million during the quarter, during the 3-month period, outraising Pat Toomey, outraising his primary opponent, Joe Sestak, and putting to rest, of course, getting a lot of help from the White House. Joe Biden was in the state just yesterday. Of course, that wasn't during the quarter. But that, I think, is what we're seeing, is that Specter has been able to rally the Democratic establishment behind him, and the Democratic establishment means money. That is what he has over Joe Sestak.
No, I think that's fascinating that even with all of the hesitancy from independents in the state and from some Democrats and the grassroots Democrats especially, the reality is Arlen Specter as a legislative vote, as a legislative priority, is very important. And I think even the grassroots understand that from now until especially the healthcare vote, what is the point of going against him or raising money for Joe Sestak, which is going to be one of Joe Sestak's bigger problems in terms of raising money. That said, he still has $4.7 million on hand. So you take $8 million, almost $5 million, put that up, even in expensive Pennsylvania,
You're talking about
Sestak, that's a lot of cash that's going to be spent on a very, very ugly primary. And in the end, it just means if you're Pat Toomey, who's sitting on less than $2 million right now, you're just laughing because you know that whoever wins this thing is going to be very bloody.
Right. It's interesting, though, that we talked about the legislative priority or the legislative agenda that Specter has, and the position he plays right now in the 60-seat Democratic majority. It's surprising to me that he hasn't positioned himself as more of a swing vote in this debate. He is squarely on the side of the Democrats. He's actually squarely, I think, in the camp of the public option Democrats, but seems to be willing to negotiate, to be sort of flexible, given that he does need to raise all this money, and he is going to have the tough primary and the tough general election if he wins the primary. I'm surprised he's not trying to sort of manipulate, if you will, the healthcare debate for the purposes of fundraising.
Yeah,
not to be too cynical.
Well, I know, but he has to worry about positioning himself in a primary, and I think that being a loyal soldier is the key.
Right. That's exactly
all right.
Right.
So,
Nevada.
Harry Reid also raising a great deal of money. Here's what's interesting to me: $8.7 million. We can understand why the guy's the majority leader of the United States Senate. However, if he is as vulnerable as the polls are showing, why can't Republicans do better at raising money? Tarkanian hasn't been in that long, but still $270,000. Really not that impressive. The other issue is $8.7 million. He's already starting to put it on TV. Nobody's going to have the money to be able to go up running ads against him. Can he use that to really set the table for this race?
Well, 8.7 too. I mean, 6 years ago, 8.7 million was as much as you would need for the entire election in Nevada. Remember, this is a very inexpensive state. It's not Pennsylvania, so that's a big deal. But let's move on. So many other things to talk about. A challenging pattern.
Yes, Republican challengers, John, raised a lot more money than Democrats in those competitive open seat races. So these were the races that Republicans were worried about from the very get-go. Places like New Hampshire, Kelly Ayotte, outraising than Congressman Hodes. Again, remember, Congressman Hodes, Democrat in the Democratic majority in a state that Democrats have dominated in. Impressive.
Ohio.
Portman.
Rob Portman raising more money than Lee Fisher.
$1.3 million.
Lee Fisher, a statewide office holder. Rob Portman, currently out of office.
Correct.
Interesting. And in Missouri, you've got Secretary of State Robin Carnahan being outraised by Congressman Roy Blunt.
Again, in the minority.
In the minority. That one not as surprising, I think, as the other two. I think you've got Roy Blunt, always been a good fundraiser, very well connected in the Washington lobbying community.
Fair point, although Carnahan, again, is seen as she's a statewide office holder. She has her name. She's also seen as a front runner, and he's sitting in the minority. The minority party is supposed to have a tough time raising money. That's clearly not the case. In Illinois, the final example, Mark Kirk outraising Lexi Giannoulis, although Lexi, we know, has his own cash that he can tap into.
And he's also raised a lot of money previously, so he's still got a little bit more money on hand. But what is it? Why do you think Republicans are raising more money? But interestingly, only in those open seat races. When you look at the challenger races, most of the Democrats are far outraising their opponents.
Well, the incumbent Democrats, you don't see many warning signs, except for Chris Dodd. It's interesting.
Yeah.
He raised $900,000. Now, part of this is, remember, he's running now as the anti-establishment, anti-Wall Street candidate.
Sure.
Those are the kinds of people he would normally count on to help him raise money. So that's cut off a big spigot of funds for him. I think the reason is just the Republican base is just much more enthusiastic about winning seats than Democrats are, and
or at least holding on to seats. I mean, most of these seats we're talking about are Republican-held seats right now.
That's fair. Okay.
All right, in the 2010 field, Amy Walter, who's spent the most? Why does it matter?
Well, the one person that I think that we can all point to as the biggest spender is Linda McMahon in the Senate race.
Yes.
$3 million in debt because she has already spent $2 million. She's $3 million in debt. She wrote herself a check. She's already spent $2 million. But TV in that state is very expensive, especially if you go up on New York City TV. Here's the problem for Dodd. It's not just that he got outraised by Rob Simmons. It's that McMahon and now Tom Foley, both up on TV, both attacking Dodd. So he is hoping for a divisive Republican primary to help him out, and yet it looks like everybody's aiming their fire at him, even in a Republican primary.
Isn't that going to change? I mean, as we get closer, if this Republican primary stays as tight as it is, you've got Tom Foley, Rob Simmons, and Linda McMahon, all of whom are going to be well-funded, all of whom are going to be able to train their fire on each other as the election, as the race for the nomination.
Yes, and that's what Dodd has to hope, and it's a late primary.
Right,
so.
It's a very late primary. You've also got Pagliuca, the Celtics owner. Pagliuca, spending or raising $2 million, most of it his own, spending as much, running TV ads in Massachusetts, introducing himself to voters in that January special election. So a lot of money being spent up in New England on television ads for the Senate races.
All right, I think we probably are going to have to wrap up our final thing.
There's so much more to talk about.
I know. But here's what we have to say. Winners and losers for this is your last word.
Yes.
For this last quarter, who had the best quarter? Who had the worst quarter?
I'll keep it brief. I think Harry Reid did a lot of good for himself in sort of helping to minimize the Harry Reid is vulnerable storyline, which has been gaining a lot of ground in Washington. The polls still show him vulnerable, but his fundraising, I think, was really strong. And I think Rand Paul, a name we haven't mentioned, and a name most of Washington hadn't really mentioned, except that he was the son of Ron Paul, is showing the same fundraising strength that his father showed in the 2008 presidential primary. In the Kentucky Senate race, he raised a lot of money off of the internet, just like his dad did. That could, in this race, make him a force, although he has, there is still a Republican frontrunner, Trey Grayson.
Okay,
Those
very
are my
good.
winners.
All right, I agree. I think Reid is good. Toomey, I think, also did himself a world of good, raising over $1.5 million, trying to prove that he is a viable candidate in this race. That comes on the heels of the last couple of polls out of the state showing him tied with Arlen Specter. So I'm going to give him a best. And for the worst, it's not really fair to put Mike Castle in that category since he only recently announced for the Senate. But if he'd really been thinking about running, really $57,000, that's the best that you could do.
Exactly.
It certainly raises questions in my mind about his ability to put that together, though I think in the end he'll probably have the money.
And remember, Delaware is a very expensive state. It's a small state, but you're going to have to compete in the Philadelphia media market.
Yeah.
So much good stuff, Amy Walter. Thank you so much.
But unfortunately, we are out of time.
Goodbye.